let's go ahead and get started. We're going to do a couple things today. We're going to talk a little bit about the Hall Waters Prize, and then we'll get into, you may have noticed that you have an assignment due Saturday or Sunday night, so we'll go over that because I know you're probably freaking out not knowing what we're doing. But just to give you an idea, on Thursday we have a guest coming in to talk a little bit about career planning and placement. Then next week we'll go on our author houses and we'll do the Franz Kafka. I wanted to go ahead and jump in on the Hall Waters Prize. I'm going to pass these around as well, and I need to collect these back at the end of class if you don't mind, because those are the only ones we have. Also, we will, after we do the Hall Waters stuff, have you sign up for your author that you're going to be working on this semester. Is there anybody here who wasn't here last week? Okay. You were sick. Did you have a chance to look at the introduction video that's in the line?
No, I did not. It wouldn't show up for me.
Okay. Well, we'll try to figure that out. If you have about 5 minutes after class, I'll get it. But we can go over it after class real quick. All right. So I'd like to introduce to you our collaborator for this semester working on the Hall Waters. This is Mrs. Sydney Bailey, who tell us your exact title again.
Director of Annual Giving and Special Projects.
Okay.
So I work in the Office of Development, and I do annual giving, working with alumni and donors, and then special projects. I have a few events that are my title, with this being one of them. So, and this is my favorite event because it is so fun.
Tell us a little bit about your position again and how long you've had it and kind of how you came up through the ranks to get it, if you don't mind.
Okay. So let's just start. I'm a 2019 Troy grad. I was a psychology major and thought I wanted to go into one career path, and suddenly I'm in this one. So I'm originally from North Alabama, and I was living in Huntsville. Then my husband and I got married and we moved back to Troy, and I started working at the university in the Office of Development. I was an annual giving officer, and so I've been in this position area in this department since my time at Troy, since 2022. So I moved into this role in 2024, I believe. So annual giving is working with donors and alumni to secure gifts of $25,000 and under. So I do that through targeted emails, mailers, events, any ways to kind of interact with alumni and donors and work closely with the alumni department. And this job is very rewarding because I get to meet so many people. I get to work with students. I don't know if you've seen Giving Day on campus. I'm over that. Our department is over that. And so it's a really fun job, a really fun career. You know, it's not just sitting behind a computer and asking people for money. It's going out there, forming relationships, and with the ultimate goal of making Troy University better for you, for the future generations. We have really great alumni and donors. Hopefully you'll see that through this process too, whenever we get down to planning the event and working the event. So
thank you. So as I told you last week, this year is unusual that I actually have our recipients identified before February 1st, and usually we're kind of rushing to get it figured out. And as I had mentioned to you in December, we're going to do a married couple this year, Tom Franklin and his wife, Beth Ann Fenley, both of whom are very well known in Southern literature, both very important to contemporary literature in a lot of ways. So we're very excited about it. It'll be a different kind of year, giving two $5,000 checks. And I'm going to try to get in the executor of the state that the award is named after, Mr. Swim, probably try to get him. He did not answer my email yet, so he may be traveling, but hopefully we'll get him in, if not next week, then the week after that. So what I wanted to do today is go over just a little bit of what the expectations for you guys will be as far as the event goes, because you really are going to be the planners of it. And what this entails is basically sort of giving us the ideas of what you want to do, and then us seeing what we can do. Do you have any idea of how much money we have in that account right now?
No, but I can make note and pull that for you and send it to you.
I would say we probably, so the history of this award is that we have we had an alum whose name was Dr. Wade Hall, who was a professor, who's worked up in Kentucky, I believe, for part of his career. Interestingly enough, he was one of the first people to write about Cormac McCarthy, so there's an interesting connection with Dr. Bonds's area of interest there. Dr. Bonds did not know that until a recent trip we took, and he said to me, "Isn't this the same guy?" And I said, "I didn't know he did Cormac McCarthy," so it's a small world. But Dr. Hall went to Troy, which I believe was then called Troy Teachers College. Might not have even been Troy College yet. But he would ride the train to class in the 50s, believe it or not. That's how long ago it was. He's always been very invested in this university. I will tell you the history. This award began probably almost 20 years ago, and it had a bumpy start getting going. Now, I'm going to say some things that stay in the room because this is very important in terms of one of the things you're going to be learning is about donor relations. And I'd love for you to talk about sort of your experience in dealing with donors too, because there is an art to kind of kissing up, I guess we would say. So when this award started, they gave it here on this campus a few times. At the time, I was on the Montgomery campus, so I was not involved in it. And then, long about 2012, I got a call from a woman who is no longer with us, but at the time I believe she was the head of your department, Dr. Liberté. She called me up and she said, "We are on the verge of losing this $250,000 endowment because the English department is not awarding this every year." And my first thought was, because we had a lot of tensions between the different campuses at that time, why is this my problem? And I was told very bluntly that the chancellor decided it was my problem. So when that happens, it's your problem. There's no way of getting around it. So it was very awkward for me because there was, I think, a sense down here at the time that maybe I was taking it over. But one of the first things we want to emphasize is if you might be in a position with an organization someday, let's imagine you get a job doing arts management. You have to cultivate your donors, and that means striking a relationship with them and really making them happy. And that was not always the case with Dr. Hall and this department. Later on, when I sort of investigated why the department chose not to do it or was sort of indifferent about it, what I was told was he was too active in choosing the recipient. And it just sort of felt like to people in this department that we were giving awards to his friends. Now, is that the case? I don't know. But you may be in a situation where you have to set up programming that involves working with a donor. And in some cases, they may say to you, "Hey, my third cousin twice removed has written a novel. Wouldn't it be great if he came in and did a book signing?" And you'll be in a position where you kind of have to say, what are the pros and cons of doing this? I will tell you, when the general was with us, he was a great guy. We had a couple instances where I think trustees had relatives that did some creative writing, and we ended up hosting them for creating writing events because, quite honestly, it doesn't cost us anything as a department, and we're doing the university a service. So the number one rule I want to emphasize is we're never too good to work with anybody on these events. It's the award that we want to live on. We don't want it tainted in any way, even if it's not, even if the controversy is not showing up in the Metropolitan or the news, we want to appear excited about it. So that's the first thing I would want to say is it took us a long time to sort of, I think, get this award stable. When I ran the Alabama Book Festival, we tried to do it in a way where we could give it to a major author and kind of piggyback off them to where an author could come in, meet with Troy students and then the next day be part of the book festival. And that was the only way, quite honestly, we were able to get Pat Conroy right before he died. He did not come down to Troy. He was not willing to get on 231 for whatever reason. So we had to do everything up in Montgomery. But, most writers, especially now that the book festival is no more, are more than happy to come down here for a day. Now, there's a couple other things, but I think first of all, I'd like to ask you a little bit about your experience with donors, and if you can be sort of discreet and give us maybe some issues that you've had to deal with just in a way that has affected your professional development.
Yes, so it's a very tricky relationship. Not so much with the level of donors that I work with, but there are some higher level donors that I do work with, whether it be on different kinds of scholarships, that have endowments such as this one, and they give money, and they're giving a lot of money, so they want to see the fruit of that. They want to know that who we're awarding to, what their money is being used for their intent. So we always try to stick to donor intent, but when it comes to something like this, as you were mentioning, it got a little fishy in the area of who you were awarding to. Same way with scholarships, there are some donors that say, hey, I have my best friend's niece has come to Troy and I want to award her my scholarship. Well, it doesn't work that way. You have to follow the guidelines and work with the department whose the scholarship is under to be able to award that scholarship fairly. And so you have to keep that relationship with the donor. You have to work in between to say, hey, we want to follow your intent, but also we have to follow these. And they're IRS guidelines. They're not just Troy guidelines. A lot of times are IRS guidelines. And that's what you have to deal with a lot of times with donations in general is IRS guidelines, which is a great thing to fall back on because you're not just saying it's not my rules, it's the government's rules. But at the same time, when you form that relationship and you know that donor and you know who you're working with, you kind of know what clicks. You kind of know where they're going to be, what they're going to be happy with, what they're going to be upset with. That's the most important thing is knowing your donor. So I've run into areas where the donor hasn't been happy, and I've had to come back and have that difficult conversation of we have to follow these guidelines. We're still following your intent in this way, and then I have donors that I have great relationships with that I text frequently and keep up with them and let them know what's going on with their scholarships and their gifts and different things going around Troy. So it's all about that relationship and what kind of relationship you have with the donor.
Great, thank you. So we have an award. We make contact with the recipients. We set up a way for them to come here. So we do cover travel. Obviously, when you do an event like this, you can't say we're going to give you an award, but you got to get here on your own. That would be a little rude. So, but there is some bureaucracy that we deal with at Troy, which can be a little complicated. And so I want to sort of talk through some of the issues we've dealt with over the years, because again, these are the types of things that you want to work around. Let me put it this way. This year we're lucky because our recipients are in Oxford and they've chosen to drive over. So when one of our recipients drives over, we can pay them mileage afterward. And so that's what, 52 cents a mile or something might have gone up. Haven't done my taxes yet, so I don't know right off the top of my head. But we figure that out and we can just cut that as either a separate check or add it to the stipend when we do that. However, the times we have flown people in, it's gotten a little complicated. The university's preference, and I don't think it's a real preference, I think it's just the way the paperwork tends to be around here. For example, if I as a faculty member go to a conference or when we went to New York this summer, you got to put it on your own card and get paid afterwards. You guys know this from going to the
On
conference
the most
recently.
expensive site.
Yes, and that's the other thing is you gotta go through the, I don't know, we've tried for 15 years to figure out whose cousin works at Christofferson that got that deal. Because it used to be 20 years ago, I could just get it off Travelocity or whatever. Now, I will say for most university travel, when you're bringing in special guests, you don't have to use Christofferson. So in a couple cases, what we've been able to do, my own personal feeling is you never want to go to a guest that you're bringing in and say, hey, buy your ticket and we'll reimburse you. That seems a little rude to me. So we've struggled to find a way around that. And I think the last time we did it where we bought it, I'm trying to remember. There's been a couple of variations. One time we did go over to your guys' office and use the general's credit card. And you know how complicated it is, buying a ticket. You got to have people's birthday, you got to have the proper spelling, all of that. So that could be a little stressful. 3 years ago, we brought in a poet from New York City, taught at New York University. His agent preferred for them to buy the ticket, and then we reimbursed them when we paid the stipend. That's a great way to do it. That way, and literary agencies do that because before they pay him, they take their 15% out. So that's part of the reason that's done that way. But that saved us the hassle of trying to get all his information, make sure you like this flight, what seat do you want, all this kind of stuff. I will tell you that in a case like that, where somebody flies in late at night, you got to be prepared. That year, one of the ways that I blew it was I sort of assumed he had probably eaten on the way, got into Montgomery and wanted to go get something to eat, and everything had shut down by 11 o'clock. So, I was in the hotel kind of trying to figure out how to DoorDash real quick. And he was a little frustrated by that. So these are the things that you want to think through when you're planning. My best advice is when you plan events like this is you want to think through everything that can go wrong first and have a backup plan. One reason we require recipients to come in the day before, is because I've been through events where people tried to fly in that morning and inevitably a plane gets delayed. And then, things get really frustrating. So you just want to be aware of that. Now, here's something else to think about. We usually have our guests stay in Montgomery as opposed to staying in Troy. And I usually bring them down and take them back. Can you tell us why we do that?
Probably because Montgomery has a nicer hotel.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, we do have people who come into Troy and stay in Troy. What hotel do they want to stay in?
Okay, honestly, we have gotten some bad reviews from some of the Troy hotels, so the ones that people are liking right now is that new hotel right by Publix. But it's really expensive, but everyone's loving that one compared to the others that we have.
I tend to prefer not to do it in Troy, just because the folks we bring in, they come in, typically they come in Thursday, so I have to take them out to dinner Thursday night. Then they come back after all day Friday, and they have Friday night, and typically they want to go out for dinner after they get back. And it's just easier for folks down in Montgomery to kind of walk around down in there where the hotels are. Hopefully there won't be a shooting this spring like there was in the fall that kind of impacted business there. But, it's just a little easier to manage, a little less convenient because we have to bring them down. That's 2 hours in a car round trip. But it's a little more fancy.
It's about the experience.
Yeah. And part of our goal is to show them that we're good hosts. I mean, we really want to, that we want to be a mint on the pillow type of operation. So we'll talk about that. You and I need to talk about what hotel, because I really don't want to do Staybridge ever again after.
I did the Gonzales.
We did last year. I think it was because I had such a bad experience with that lady that one year at Staybridge. But there's a lot of good hotels down in Montgomery that are right clustered together. One year that I did not do it, they had somebody stay in Montgomery and expected them to drive themselves down to Troy. That's a no-no. Okay, if you're gonna bring somebody in, you gotta be prepared to chauffeur them. So you wanna think all these things through and imagine you're the best host possible. So that brings us to getting them down here. What do we do the day of? What do we do for the events? Well, very typically, we start in the morning with a public reading. And so we want to talk about what facilities here on the campus you guys want to use. In the past, we've used the ballrooms in the Trojan Center. One year, we went to book it, and it was already booked, and we ended up having to do the theater there in the Trojan Center, which is fine, but it's a different experience. So if you guys were planning this, are there other facilities on campus that you would think about holding this event?
I mean, the classrooms in, what is it called? The history building, Patterson. I mean, they're fine, but I mean, I would still prefer a ballroom.
Yeah.
Like, I was just thinking the seating, there's more seating in those classrooms on the first floor.
I feel like if I was just classroom or something, or like the business building, if we could have
Oh,
access
the
to it,
business
because
building.
honestly, everything else does not have a lot
Yeah.
put into it.
I haven't looked at the classrooms in the business
They're really
building.
nice.
Really?
So those classrooms are great. I just taught in there this morning. Probably they would have classes in there, so we probably wouldn't have access to classroom buildings. The business department has not been open to sharing their facilities.
Yeah, I
as you
figured.
probably know.
Another thing you gotta think about is, how many, you have enough space for how many you think might attend.
And that's gonna be an issue this year, because quite honestly, I was not happy with the attendance last April. And I take the blame for that, because I just didn't get people organized and didn't press the students to really publicize it as much. It also occurred a little late in the semester where people were busy and, we just, some years are up and down. I will tell you in 2002 or 2022, we packed out that ballroom, and I was we were having to pull chairs out of closets to have seats. And that's what we want to aim for this year. So one of the things you guys want to think about is what are publicity places, not just on campus, but in the Troy area, Montgomery area, the Dothan area, that we can draw people to. Because Tom Franklin and maybe to a lesser extent Beth Ann Finley are very well known, they have a fan base. And so we want to try to tap into that and see if we can get the public to come to this very unique event. I don't know that they've done a lot of joint stuff together, all right? So I'm gonna suggest we do it in the ballrooms again, because that feels like a good central location. So how do we do that?
You have to go through, which I've already done it,
Okay.
but you have to go through event management and request that space. You sent me the date of April 18th, that's a Saturday, so I booked it for the 17th.
Okay, that's good, because I was off on that, so I appreciate that. Yeah, we are April 17th, just as a reminder, that's Friday. And I would ask that you guys, that's 3 months from now, talk to your teachers. Everybody in English will let you out. If you have other classes where it's an issue, let me know, I will talk to them. But this is an important event for all of us to kind of go through all day today. It'll be exhausting, but it's an important event for you to see how the sausage is made. How much does renting out the ballroom cost? Yeah, I never
So
looked
I
at
don't
it.
know.
It's expensive.
It's expensive.
I mean, there is nothing around here that is cheap. We get charged for everything. So as we build a budget, we want to be aware of that. Now, I will tell you, with the $250,000 endowment, Over the years, we've never spent more than we had made that particular year. Usually when you have an endowment, you can kind of bank on about 5% a year. So what is 5% of 250,000? Like
This can
five,
go wrong with the.
it's a good chunk. 10% would be 25, so 5%, 10% would be 25, so 5% would be whatever half of 25 is. You can imagine that we,
12,500.
okay, how much? 12,500? Okay. So in theory, we have a budget of 12,500. Now this year, because we're given 2, that's 10,000. So we will be dipping a little bit into what is in interest from previous years. However, as far as I can remember, we've never spent more than about 8,000 or 9,000 in a year. So I would say the ballroom is probably going to cost $1,000. That's usually about what it is, and that's not a big deal. So one of the things that you guys are going to be responsible for is we'll bring them in for a joint reading, 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, somewhere in there. We'll decide. We'll probably have 4 of you, maybe 5 of you, interview them. So one of the things that we'll be doing is coming up with a set of questions and we'll have to go back and forth with each of them about their careers, about specific works, about their issues. Now, in past years, we've had them read a little bit. Since we have 2 writers, I don't know that we want to do that because readers tend to get going, and this is something you experience. Back in 2024, when Patricia Foster came, wonderful, wonderful. But you give her a question, it was a 10-minute answer itself. And, we had a smaller class then, but we didn't necessarily get through as many questions as we want. I usually try to tell them, keep the answer short so we can get through more. But you guys will all be preparing questions, and we'll spend probably a class and a half going through them and rewriting them. I will tell you, one of the most embarrassing things that can ever happen is you have an interviewer who has not prepared. And what that means is not necessarily read everything they've written, but has not thought through the questions and made them specific enough to give the appearance that they have prepared. One of the worst events I ever saw was, and they hold this thing in Monroeville every year. They have a literary festival down there where they give the grand prize for the Writers Hall of Fame. And they were interviewing Allison. Gosh, we gave her the award back during the pandemic here, and we had to beam her in. That was before we were here, I think. But she's a very famous country singer. We did a songwriter that year. But she was being interviewed in Monroeville. And it was clear the interviewer had no idea who she was, even though she was from Monroeville, had no idea what what she was famous for. She had sung at the Oscars early in her career, and it was just mortifying. And it was also not a good interviewer because he did not really have the art of follow-ups. So sometimes your interviewee may say something interesting that you want to do a follow-up on. She would say something sort of provocative or very interesting, and you go, "Oh, very nice. How about?"
Oh.
And it was just very awkward. I mean, at one point, people laughed when he did that transition. So we just want to avoid that. So we'll talk a lot about the art of interviewing. Now, one of the ways that we prepare publicity-wise is probably 2 of you will do an interview for Troy TV to publicize the reading beforehand, and we'll get you set up on that. That'll be other questions, and the trick is you got to be extemporaneous. So you got to have the details down and know what you're doing. Last year, I think our 2 people were very, very nervous. And it kind of showed when they did the publicity kind of interview. So we want to get each other feel comfortable with it, and natural. Part of this is getting you to feel comfortable with public speaking. How many of you have ever done public speaking before? Okay, a few of you. Some of you are probably comfortable with it. I will probably be picking on the ones who aren't to really get you over that hump, to be part of the publicity stuff. So after we do the public reading, then we have the big luncheon. And we usually have that at the IAC.
Not this year.
Not this year.
They won't-
Okay,
They won't let me book it.
really? Okay,
I think because it's a really tight space and the amount of people we invite. We try to have 9 tables in there. If y'all can picture that, if you've been in there, it's very, very tight when they're serving food. So they've asked me not to book it there unless we wanted to limit our guest list, which we
Okay.
probably don't.
Yeah.
So I've already secured the towers.
oh, okay. Has anybody been to the towers before?
No.
Okay, the towers are over by the football field, upstairs.
Are they
Maybe we
nice?
could, do you think we could go some Thursday over there?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, maybe when we do the class picture. we could
Maybe,
do something over there.
Yes.
Okay, the
The
towers are a great space. We've done it a couple times in the towers. One year we did it was most appropriate because the guy we gave it to, Ace Atkins, back in 2018, his father had been a football coach, had been the football coach at Troy when he was born, so it was very appropriate. But the towers is a nice space, I like that a lot, and it means we can invite more people. Now, when we have this big luncheon, everybody is our guest. So that's probably the most expensive thing, other than the award itself. And I think last year it was maybe $4,000?
Yeah, 4 to 5,000.
Okay. So you will be picking the menu. And this is always the fun part because I don't think our menu's in here, is it?
I should have been you.
You're just kidding.
One of the things that we have done in past years is to come up with creative names tied to the authors for the menu.
I love that.
So this is kind of the fun part. So for example, last year, our Jennifer Harn, who was a poet, we had an appetizer called Tell the World You're a Wildflower Peach Salad. 2 years ago when Patricia Foster did it, we had By the Sea Strawberry and Pecan Spring Salad. So we will sit down one Thursday and kind of go through their books and come up with some puns or some stuff to give it. And I will tell you, probably second only to a $5,000 check, that makes them smile. They appreciate the effort that goes into that. So, we had Written in the Sky, key lime pie one year. I think Jennifer had a poem called Working the Apple or working something like that. So we called it Working the Apple Pie. So as we get into researching the writers, you want to keep an eye out for the titles, and we'll do all of that together. If you look at the program, you'll see the main types of duties that about half of you will perform. At some point, we're going to have you guys will decide on who's going to be the MC. Okay? And that's the person that sort of introduces the event, introduces some of the different speakers. One of you will introduce the dean. One of you will, introduce the chancellor, which is always a little scary. If you know Jason Fry. I made him do that one year because his family is so connected to Troy, and I've never seen a human being sweat more in his life. So,
They give you pretty much what to say, though,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
good when introducing him.
and then probably two of you will do the award presentation, and we will write that together. We will kind of draft that. The two of you will draft it, and then we'll write it together. So this is very important because you become the face of the award. And again, that means much more to the recipients than if I did it, right? Because they figure that's my job. But it's much more interesting for you guys to get it. Now, one thing I'll say about that day and about anything publicly that we do for this event, what are you going to guess the dress code is?
Professional.
Professional, okay? So, for example, if you look at our picture we will take as a class picture,
Oh, God.
probably outside of the towers, you probably see some faces that you know are more slicked up from last year than you've ever seen them. And we've never had an incident where somebody showed up, you know, in pajamas or, you know, something, you know.
That's what the back row is for.
That's right. Well, but we'll talk some interesting conversations at some point about professional dress and what that means both for men and women. It can mean very different things. You are at a university. I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but you're at a university where we have a first lady who has very particular ideas. Do you have any stories? No, you probably can't share. We're among friends, it's all silent, we're hermetically sealed. But there are, in this, you know, we can debate this, but the reality is, you know, we all get judged on our professionalism. And that's the main thing I want you to come out with is the professionalism. So, I want to make sure that everybody understands what professional dress would be. You don't have to show up in a three-piece suit or looking like you're heading into a grand ball, but you do want to, we all are going to be a little more slicked up than we normally are. And that's just, again, part of the professionalism of it. Now, our recipients, they show up in whatever way they're comfortable, and you know, artists are usually a little more bohemian than the rest of us, so they may have a different take on it. But we are going to pretend for a day that we are part of the professional administration staff. And if you've ever been over in Adams Hall, you know they look a little cleaner. Maybe not the right word, but a little more slicked up than the rest of us. So we'll spend some time talking about that. If you had told me 30 years ago that I would spend time talking with students debating spaghetti straps, I would never have believed it. But those are issues that kind of come up in these types of situations. So we have a big lunch. I'm very excited about the towers. Actually, I like that place.
That's great news.
So that is a long event. And one of the things that we have to do is when you get a lot of speakers, you want to try to convey to them to stay on script. Now, we have Chancellor, and I love our Chancellor, but he loves to give a speech. And Mr. Swim loves to give a speech. So sometimes we have to very gently, not so much with the Chancellor, but I usually do have to say with Mr. Swim, keep it short, all right? And that's just so we don't wear people out. We do not want to have an event where people feel like they have to get up and sneak out after they leave. And that has happened before. So we will come up with a guest list. Usually the main invitees are the English department. And I do get on our English department about participating in this. Some of them grumble. Well, I don't teach on Fridays and I would have to come to campus. Yeah, you're gonna come to campus, but your job is being part of this and participating. So, but we also invite a lot of the cream of the crop administrators, the top echelon. This is a chance for you to mingle with them, and that's an important thing. For them to know who you are, and for you to also prove that you are all the articulate and professional people that I know you are. So it's going to take us out of our comfort zone to be in this crowd. When we do the seating arrangements, you guys will not be sitting together, okay? Because that does you no good. What we do is we sprinkle everybody around, and you may not sit with the Chancellor. You can have my chair if you really want to sit with the Chancellor. But you're gonna be among VIPs, and that may be, who's the gentleman that always comes from Troy Bank?
Mr. Kirkman.
Mr. Curvin.
He is a foundation board member
Yeah.
and the president of Troy Bank Trust.
Who are some of the other VIPs that we usually bring in?
We invite all of the board of trustee members, all of the alumni board, all of the foundation board, as well as all of the SBCs, you know, Dr. Palmer, Mr. Agbawala, Dr. Bookout, and most all of them come. So, I'm trying to think if there's any more. But you'll probably also see a lot of your professors there too, so that's just as important.
I've always been very impressed the degree to which the vice chancellors support this event, and the deans.
The deans, yeah.
And I mean, I know it's a free meal, but at the same time, I think they really do enjoy the award itself. And it gives us a visibility that it's probably the most visible public thing we do in the English department. But it's also something that they enjoy because it's a different type of event than they usually have to go to. So I'm thinking, tell us a little bit about, because you usually do all the decorations and choose all that. Take us a little bit through that process.
That is the most nerve-wracking part of my job because, like he mentioned before, the first lady is very particular. I've heard stories about how she does not like certain flowers and things like that, so you have to keep that in mind whenever you're planning, but you also have to just think, in general, sitting at a table, you don't want a big plant in between the middle of the table where you can't see everybody. You don't want something that's off-brand or off-theme, so there's a lot that goes into that, but it's mainly just table decorations, and then usually the tables are so tight to fit so many people in there that, which this year may not have as much of that, but it's mainly just taken up by the plates and the cups and everything on the table. So, but I've done, we've had like books on the table with like a little plant. We've done like tea cups and put a plant in there. But I have like a local florist that I work with who helps me with ideas, things like that. But it's normally just a little plant. Usually we don't have to decorate much because of the IAC. Now, with the towers, I'm just going to have to go up there and see what we may need. I may have to add a fern here or there and around the podium, but.
You think our florist would come to class one day and talk to us?
That would be nice.
It depends on who I use this year.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can get him in, because I think the decor is, again, it's always part of the look that is the part that people remember. Nobody's going to remember a speech, but they will remember the food and the look. So as we start planning that, we'll have you back over and we can talk through ideas, and ultimately you'll be your decision, obviously. But maybe we can help you out a little more this year.
Sure.
And stuff like that.
Sure, because if she doesn't like it, I'm just going to blame it on y'all.
Tell us a little bit about your experience. Now, one of the things when you have an event on campus, as you probably know, it's not like we can go to, it's a really good restaurant where we had our party.
B Graves.
We can't go to B Graves and say, will you cater this? Right? We're contractually required to work with, what's her name? Sodexo.
So everyone in.
And that's true at every university or every public facility, basically. So, we have to kind of operate within what they offer. So we'll bring in menus one day and we'll kind of nail it down. There is kind of a joke in these type of events that, it's kind of the rubber chicken circuit, we call it, but we've never had bad food. I will say that. So, and again, part of that is because the Hawkinses are so insistent on the presentation being good that Sodexo really does kind of live in fear as well of disappointment. So we'll pick out the menu. I will tell you right now that it's very difficult to feed anybody at events like these for less than somewhere between $35 and $50. I mean, that's just the way things are. So depending on how big our guest list is, this will be our most expensive item. And I'll bring in the exact amount that we have to spend. But we'll be okay because I know there's money left over from previous years.
And I should have the food invoice, so I can send it
Okay.
last year so we can see
Yeah.
what that was last year.
Yeah. I will be honest, I've never paid much attention to the budget because, I figure you guys will tell me if I get too extravagant, but we've never been super extravagant. So after we do the lunch, the final thing we do is we take them over to the journalism school and do an interview for Troy TV, 30 minutes. We'll probably have 3 of you, we'll sit down with them, and it may only be 2 because they may only be able to fit 4 people on those chairs. But it won't be the hosts interviewing, it'll be you guys. So again, we'll need a separate set of questions, and you'll have, those of you who do that, we'll rehearse that and be very practice, so it feels natural. That's the main thing, is getting you to the point where if you have to do one of these events, you either can speak, you can memorize your questions or have them at least handy enough. You don't want to look like you're reading stuff, okay? All right, anything else I didn't cover? Did you think about I gave you a copy of the press release. That's a format that, I know something we should cover. That 1 or 2 of you will come together on using this basic format. We'll also come up with some basic text and ideas for the flyer that we will distribute. The other thing is this year we're going to make some posters. And we're gonna ask everybody to be thinking of places off campus that you can take posters, so we can really work on getting another crowd. If you know anybody that's in media, that maybe the radio station downtown, one year we got on there talking about it.
I work there.
Yeah.
Do you really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm a reporter.
Oh,
So
well, there you go. We will be,
I'll talk to my boss.
yeah, definitely. That's awesome. I did not know that. So great. And again, a spot on there is usually less than 10 minutes, but it does get the word out. So if you know any sort of online places, the message boards even, we just want to be able to get the word out and we really want to try to pack the ballrooms this year. One thing I wanted to ask you about, because this is always controversial, students always ask me, can we just design our own posters? And the answer is no, because anything that's done for Troy has to go where?
Through marketing.
This is a huge controversial thing, because let me tell you, if you know Professor Stagel over in the art department, he was asked by our dean to produce a magazine. Have you been in all this?
I've heard about it.
You've heard this story, okay. So, let me just say this. The departments tend to hate marketing, and marketing tend to hate the departments. Just because we have different purposes and different functions, and we always don't communicate very well. So Professor Stagel was asked to do a magazine. He spent several months designing it, sent it around to people. What would you change? Of course, I said make my picture bigger, but and then they reduced it. But the idea is that he put all this effort into it, and then it had to go to marketing. And I want to say they made something like 1,000 changes in a 50-page magazine. Now, I won't speak for him, but my rumor was he was not happy. I'll say it that way. Again, I understand that because he put a lot of effort into it. But inevitably, when you work for a corporation, there is going to be a group that has the final say on everything. And that involves typography, it involves color. I will never forget going to a meeting once 20 years ago where I had to sit through about 20 minutes on why the particular color wheel, the number, do you know the number of red that is?
I have it saved.
You have it saved.
Yeah.
There you go. We can't just get a color red. It's got to be the exact color. It's got to be the Troy logo, and they have variations on it.
They've changed it up a little bit with, I'm sure y'all seen the new designs across campus, the always real, always Troy. Things have changed a little bit, so this is gonna look a little different this year.
Yeah.
But it's been this standard print for the last couple of years now.
Yeah. So we'll have on here, this kind of stuff will be basically the same. Now it'll have the place, it'll have my name and email because I'm usually the contact person. It'll have that's not your married name. Is it?
That's my married name.
That's your married name? Okay.
Not my legal name, that's my married
Ah,
name.
okay. So, and then it'll have, your name, but you guys will be on this poster as well. All right, and because we want to give you credit for your input in all of this. So, again, one of the things that I want to emphasize is when you do this for a profession, you want to understand that it's, this is not the great American novel that you're going to be writing. There's no ownership. And we're doing it for the spirit of the award. So if you get asked to change something or some wording is tweaked, just don't take it personally. All right? Anything else?
But you can make it fun because these are
Yes.
2 different menus, both designed by marketing.
Usually,
So
the creative aspect, like I love that I had,
too.
yeah,
it looks like a library card,
Right.
our intent was, yeah.
yeah. And so those types of creative decisions, and that's what people remember. So that'll be fun.
So those are things you can look up as well, and if you find something that's cool that you want to present, I can talk to marketing and see if they're able to do something like that, because they do work, or they work with me.
You might think, since we're bringing people from Mississippi, there might be a Mississippi theme, or, the look of this, not the look of the state, but the shape of the state. I don't know, we'll just have to sort of sit down and look at their work and see if we can find themes.
Same with food.
Yeah.
We always have a chicken, we always have a second dish, and we always have a vegetarian dish. So that second dish, one year we had crab cakes, one year we had pork loin, one year, I don't know, maybe a type of fish one year.
Yeah.
So we try to switch that second dish up every year, and last year was the pork loin, so maybe we can find something that's
And again, the food is
central
always,
Mississippi.
I mean, I've never been disappointed in the food at this event. Doesn't mean I want to eat at Sodexo every day of my life, but that you will not think that is a Sodexo food. It's not cafeteria food, shall we say. So, we'll probably invite you back, probably early February to start working on the press release. Should mention as well, the press release, we do not release that ourselves. That also goes to marketing. And Mr. Ellis usually is the final person to kind of go over it and polish it, because again, it's got to have the Troy voice. And then we'll put it on the Hall Waters website and get you that link and you can start promoting it too.
But if you have any questions about what I do, the steps that I take, how I come to decisions and conclusions on things, please let me know. Anytime I'm here, ask questions, and I'll be happy to walk through any of those steps.
We'll come up with some questions for you for your February visit. And I'll let you know when I can get Mr. Swim in here, and
Perfect.
then if you want to come over for that. I should mention that Mr. Swim has always been very appreciative of what we do with this award. And that doesn't mean that the university's been able to do everything for the Dr. Hall's estate that they've wanted. And we can talk maybe sometime about they've got blueprints for some building that they wanted to do.
I really don't know what the holdup is with that, but I know that it's something that is asked just about every year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So there's been a little frustration on some things, but this award, he's always been very appreciative. All right, well, we appreciate your time.
Yes, and you'll just send me this list too, so I can
Yep.
put them on the.
I will do that. I'll send you a copy of that this afternoon.
Okay.
All right.
Thank y'all for letting me come.
Thank you for
Hey.
coming.
Actually, if you I'll send it to you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
See ya.
Appreciate it. All right, let's switch gears a little bit, because you've got an assignment due this weekend, and we haven't had a whole lot of time to talk about it. So I want to kind of go through what we're going to do first. Okay, if you look at the assignment as it's posted, you're going to do something on metadata. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pass around the roll. If you're not on the roll, please add your name. But what I want you to do is I want you to sign up for the author that you've chosen to work on this semester. Now, I know some of you have asked me specifically about certain writers. As long as they have a site that there can be some tourism development, that's all we're looking for right now. If it has an author house associated with them, that's really good, but it doesn't necessarily have to have. So, and if you haven't picked your author yet, we probably need to do it by Thursday or Friday so you can get going on it. All right, so our first assignment is you are going to pretend that you have been commissioned to write a book about the books of your author. This is not an academic book. This is a book that celebrates in some way, some aspect of the themes or the issues or the place associated with your writer. So I just want to kind of go over a little bit. Metadata is basically all the publishing info that you need about a book. And if you look in the assignment, that's things as simple as your name, the title, and the description of the book. And there's a couple different types of description. So metadata is all the stuff that gets inputted into book selling systems as a way of selling a book or even stocking a book at a bookstore or at Amazon. All right. I want to give you some examples of books about books because that's kind of the genre that we're looking at. This is the basic way of outreach that we can be as advocates for reading. There is a big genre that has exploded in about the last 15 years in which people write books that are aimed at general audiences as a way of getting them into books that they, or authors that they may not necessarily want to talk about. So for example, probably one of the big ones that kind of kicked off this genre was a sort of memoir by a writer for the New Yorker named Rebecca Mead. She wrote a book called My Life in Middlemarch. It was about her obsession with the novel Middlemarch. And so half the book is about the novel, but the other half of the book, and it's mixed in, is about her experiences traveling to places associated with the book. All right. Now, not all of us have done this kind of heavy-duty reporting. This will be in I'm flying fast because we've only got 20 minutes, but this will be in the in this week's module for you to kind of download and look at as well. Another example. This is a writer who beamed into our class probably 4 or 5 years ago. Emily Dickinson fan. Well, there's plenty of biographies of Emily Dickinson. So what she did was she came up with a different way of telling the Emily Dickinson story. And what she did was she basically turned a top 10 list into a book. She came up with the 10 pivotal moments in the making of Emily Dickinson as an artist. Okay? So you might think of a book in which you take the top 10 autobiographical moments that most determine your writer. That could be a book in itself. And again, she doesn't say this is a top 10 list, but that's basically what we're doing. We're taking a popular form, and because everybody loves lists these days. Remember when BuzzFeed was big and everybody was taking lists and quizzes and stuff? That's part of the way that they were spending off of that to popularize it. Nobody goes to BuzzFeed anymore, I know. All right. In this case, this is a guide to kind of a personal experience for probably the hardest novel you'll ever try to read, James Joyce's Ulysses. And again, it's all about the reading experience. My adventures over the years trying to make sense of this book. Okay? So that's another approach, an autobiography of reading. This is one I did a few years ago with a colleague of mine. Now, this is a collection of essays, okay? But what we want to do here is we want to note the description of the book. This is one of the things you'll be asked to do 2 descriptions of the book. One is going to be a little longer, one is going to be shorter. And by long, I mean about 150, no more than 200 words. Okay, we'll give some examples on Thursday. There are 2 reasons we have book descriptions. If you go to Amazon, right, and you land on a book that you don't know much about, one of the first things you see after the cover is a chunk of text that describes what's going on. That's the sales pitch. It's oftentimes drawn straight off the jacket copy, the flaps of the book, right? But this is probably the hardest thing you'll have to write, in which you are trying to sell people, consumers, buy this book. How do you get out of it? There's a shorter version of this, which is called the catalog text. And I'll give you some examples of that as well. But it's basically distilled down to 50 words or so. And this is what publishers do on their websites, or in the old days in catalogs, when they printed catalogs, where you only had about this much space to say what a book was. All right? And that was aimed at booksellers, maybe much more so than consumers. One of the things we'll talk about this semester is how you pitch a book. And I want to give you a personal example of mine where, more than 10 years ago, a colleague of mine said, let's do a collection of essays about Scott Fitzgerald's second novel, which nobody reads because it's terrible. But there was an opportunity to try to bring the book back, give it a reason, give people a reason for it. And you have to write a prospectus. And that's one of the projects you'll be doing at some point as well. A prospectus is simply a 10 to 15 page sales pitch about the book that you want to get a contract to do. All right. We'll talk a little bit about the process of how once you have a completed manuscript, when it's sent out to readers, to get a reader's report to see if they feel like it's a good enough book. Now, I should mention that this is more of an academic part of the process. In trade publishing, usually if you get the contract, you'll work directly with an editor. In more academic books, they send them out to experts in the field to try to get their opinion. Now, some of these are minor suggestions and stuff, usually. Because you want to be prepared for it. Although I will tell you, I've been a reader on 3 books in the last 9 months, none of which got good second readers reports, and which ended up getting rejected for different reasons. So I think I might be too easy of a grader, apparently. And we'll talk with acquisitions editors that we bring in from different presses about sort of that process. We'll talk a little bit about your book cover design. In this case, because we had a 1920s book, we wanted 1920s artwork. We wanted artwork that was in the public domain. I don't want to pay for no stinking art. All right. It just so happens that this guy, who was a very famous commercial artist in the 20s, a lot of his paintings were coming into the copyright that had expired. We'll talk about copyright, by the way. That's something else to dance around. So I pushed for this to be our cover art. And again, we were allowed to do that because we didn't have to pay anybody. I'll show you examples of what a contract looks like, what an author questionnaire looks like. Again, in academic publishing, it falls largely on you to be able to sell your own book. And we don't do very good jobs of that. All right, I'm going to come back to this particular one in a little bit. And I forgot to share the screen on those, but so let me, all right, I want to flip back a little bit to the other PowerPoint that I want to share about books. All right, I want to give you some examples. What I'd like to ask is you come to class on Thursday with some ideas about what type of book about your author you might do. Okay, so let's go over some examples of these. This is a category, again, we call books about books, or books about writers. We're not talking necessarily biographies. We're talking books that are designed as literary tributes or as appreciations, with the end design being we want to get the general public to read these books. All right, Jane Austen. How many of you are Jane Austen fans? All right, 250th anniversary this year, or last year, I guess. So there's a big interest in Jane Austen. There is a whole category of books that are basically what can we do with Jane Austen. So one professor wrote a kind of memoir, again, personal experience, called A Jane Austen Education. Now look at the subtitle. 6 novels that taught me about love, friendship, and the things that really matter. This is a genre of book in which people who've spent their lives studying, fans of particular writers, look at the writer and the work as kind of lifestyle, right? As kind of lifestyle guides. We're not reading the book for pleasure, for fun. We're talking about what we've learned from it. What can we learn? All right? And this was a genre that started in the 90s with a book about the French writer Proust, who did Remembrance of Things Past. Can't remember the title of it off the top of my head, but I'll bring that an example in on Thursday. So the lifestyle book is one example. Jane Austen teaching us etiquette, okay? And you can see kind of a description here. Now, I will tell you, academics write these types of books because it's the only type of book we'll ever do where we have a shot at getting a general audience, right? Nobody wants to read our scholarship or our criticism. Hate to break it to you. But they do want to read kind of personal experience stuff with the writer. So he weaves his own story within Austen's, right? And shows how her books are both about education and themselves are an education, right? So again, this seems kind of cheesy to me, but it's about, learning about love, life, friendship, all of this through literature. So that's one type of book that you might consider. There's Middlemarch again. This is much more the personal experience. Why does this book mean so much to me? How have my experiences in life been interwoven with this particular novel? All right. Now we get into more appreciations. So this is a book that came out about 6 or 7 years ago when Little Women was about to celebrate its 150th anniversary or something like that. But you'll notice that a lot of the subtitles of these types of books will say the story of X and why it still matters, right? So that's one way to think about your assignment. You're going to write a book about why so-and-so still matters. Okay, this came out right before the movie, the most recent movie version came out. And it was a very popular book because it gave people a way of talking about what Little Women meant to different generations over the years. All right? This is one that I wish I had done about The Great Gatsby. This came out in 2013. And again, look at the subtitle. How The Great Gatsby came to be and why it endures. Why is it important? All right? Just fell over. All right? Give you another example. Well, that's Maureen Corrigan. These are in there so you can look at them. But here's another very popular one. Written by a guy who writes a lot of books about maritime history and shipwrecks. The joke about dads love book about shipwrecks, right? It's a huge popular genre. Why do we read Moby Dick? Who cares? Well, this guy, he wrote a great book as a way of convincing people to get into Moby Dick, telling the story of how it was written, but also why it's relevant today. One of the things you may not understand about Moby Dick is, for a long time, Captain Ahab was sort of interpreted as, at least in the 30s and 40s, as a kind of fascistic leader. I mean, there was a lot of commentary done by psychologists, believe it or not, that compared Ahab to Hitler or to Mussolini. So there's a whole political angle And he talks about that. You think what you could do with it today, right? I mean, Trump is basically Captain Ahab, taking us all down to the bottom of the ocean, if you want to think of it that way. But again, it's how do you wind in history, and how do you wind in, make a case that general readers ought to read these books. All right, there you can see there's, people love these kinds of books. All right, that's the author down there. You can see from this picture why we need younger readers these days too. All right. All right, here's the Emily Dickinson book again. And there she is. I'm going to let you all look through this. Now, there's another example of this type of book that basically argues this writer matters because they can teach us something about the particular cultural or political moment. So this is a book that came out a few years ago making the case that James Baldwin, came out right after the George Floyd thing, where it was making the argument that we all need to read James Baldwin to understand the racial issues in America. All right? And this is by a guy that's often on, or he used to be on MSNBC or whatever it's called now. So again, he had a platform that he could sell this book on, right? And you see the subtitle, James Baldwin's America and its Urgent Lessons. Notice how many of these subtitles say these books matter or they can teach us something. Okay? All right. Here's a fun type of book. And I'll tell you, I was actually out the other night with a friend of mine who's in the service industry, but he also got an English degree. And he was telling me, yeah, I read this book it's a really cool book about Hemingway where it taught you how to make all of the drinks that are in Hemingway. I said, I know that guy. He's a friend of mine, right? Philip Green. So the idea here is he's a patent attorney at the Pentagon, and he's also a cocktail historian. And so he wrote a book about every single drink in Hemingway, how to make it, the history of the drink, because that's his area of expertise. He also did a book after that about other writers who had been in Paris, because the 1920s was the first age of the cocktail. So there's a lot of connection there. So again, we're talking lifestyle. This is kind of a joke book. There may be a comedy book, but everybody loves to riff on Hemingway, right? So this is a parody, how to live the Hemingway, right? How to unleash the booze inhaling animals. No, I hate this book because it's making fun of Hemingway. But I can also understand why there's an audience here for it. Here's another type of book, and I apologize if this is a little silly or offensive, but this is another type of book he did where he was talking about generations and literary generations and sexuality. So you want to try to figure out your narrow angle here. All right.
Sorry, did he put his own face over?
I think that was the author photo on the back. All right.
That's just.
I mean, again, it's a joke book. All right, very popular one if your author is into foods. Everybody loves cookbooks. You will find a bazillion literary cookbooks. There's ones on Hemingway. It helps if your writer like Pat Conroy, who's passed away now, is associated with food. All right, has an element of being a gourmand. Okay, so if your author has some sort of side fascination, that might be the way to approach it as well. Okay? And then we have Maya Angelou. And this is, again, a cookbook. These books are usually even more popular than the main text. All right? So, what I want you to think of for your first assignment, take your writer, find one of these types of books, come up with an angle in which you can pay tribute. You can sell the author, but you're looking for some sort of approach within these different types of categories. All right, and you can see in the, okay. Wait. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. All right. We got 5 minutes, so I want to show you one more thing. Because one of the things that I ask you to do for your assignment is to come come up with a book cover. And I want you to use AI to do it, either Google Gemini or a Copilot. Because with AI, that's something we can do now. So I want to show you an experience that I've been through in the last couple months with a book of mine that's coming out. And I want to tell you, I do this as a way of having you understand that you may not always be in control of your book. You may write it, but you may not have the final say over what it ends up looking like. So let me make sure I'm sharing the screen here. All right, so about 5 or 6 years ago, a friend of mine asked me if I would do a book. Okay. That's the one. Oh, here we go. If I would do a book for his series about popular music and American literature. All right. This is exactly the class that I taught a year ago, last fall. So get a contract. One of the things I would point out, look at when it was signed, almost 5 years ago. Now look in the contract when the due date was, November 1st, 2022. I will tell you that that book did not get done until early 2025.
Wow.
It took me 2 years longer than I expected to write this book. So you always want to think in your mind, if you get, some publishers, academic publishers, they'll give you time like that. Most commercial publishers will not. So if you're going to, give you another example, there's a great biographer named Peter Ames Carlin that published a book in August, a book celebrating the 50th anniversary of Bruce Springsteen's album, Born to Run. It was a making of. He started that book less than a year earlier. He did not have the time to sit around and say, he basically had to write the book in about 4 months. And he could do that because he's a full-time writer. But that entailed a lot of research, interviewing people and going listen to all these tapes. So you want to just make sure you give yourself enough time to actually do what you're going to say you're going to do. Now, I'm going to give you, this was my idea for the cover that I wanted. All right. I'm a child of the 80s and indie rock, and so there was a great band in the day called The Replacements. And I always loved this album cover because it was a takeoff on a folk album from the 60s. It was a parody, all right? So from the minute they hired me to do this book, I said, I want to do I want the book cover to be a sort of takeoff on the two of these. And I even had my friend design what it was going to look like, all right? So originally, and this is something we'll talk about in academic publishing. Academic publishing wants you to have a title that tells the readers exactly what the book is about. So there's no art to titling books in academia anymore. It's American literature and boogers or something like that. And there's no, it's your subject and that's it. They did originally allow me to have a subtitle, and I was going to call it Reading the Beat. Now, when I started out, this could be your main title, and that could be the subtitle, but that's no longer, because they want the title to sell the book to libraries. So my buddy came up with these two. I kind of like this one better, but you can see how he copied it. Here you can see the rejection from the publisher of this idea. And I kind of had a long sense because they never seemed very excited about this concept at all. All right? It just doesn't fit our design. Sorry. We don't like it. They should have just said we hate it. All right? They were trying to let me down gently, which is fine. All right? So what's the book cover going to be? Well, it's part of a series. And so this is what you may write for a series where you have to fit your ideas into this.
That's so much
All
creative
right.
space.
Now this is a piece of art, right? And so they want all these books to kind of look like this. Now, I would contend that my book could have fit in there if they had done this. All right, but they didn't want to do that. They wanted the designs of these books to look all very similar. So I even thought, I got mad and I thought, well, it's about rock and roll and literature, so maybe they could put Jack Kerouac looking like Ziggy Stardust on it. That was my AI. I almost sent this to them, but then I thought, I'm going to seem very pissy if I do this, and I don't want to do that. So I rejected that idea myself. This is an image in the book that our cover that I talk about, which is a very famous zine from the 80s, if you've ever read Love and Rockets, but I thought maybe we could take that image and use it for the book. Who's going to pay for it? They wanted to know. Well, I thought you would pay for it because you're the publisher, and I've written this book for free. Well, no, they won't pay for it. All right, so whatever art we get has to be public domain. So there went that idea. I even almost sent them this cover of a not really famous cartoon. And I know they would have rejected that because nobody's going to buy a book that ugly, right? All right. So what did they come up with? I will tell you, after my idea was rejected, I kind of just walked away. It was kind of like, whatever, you know. The interior stuff is mine. This is what they, well, I did have one more idea, and I played with AI. I said, why don't we do like a comic book strip and have different groups from different eras looking like they're reading books. Right? And so I thought you get 50s, 60s, hip hop, whatever. Here's the letter I got. We like this idea. I passed this on to my creative team to see what they come up with. Now, they said they wouldn't use AI, so they're going to have designers come up with something like that. Well, this is what they sent me. This is what the cover, the original draft was going to look
It's
like.
the same thing.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing as the other guy's book. Now, I said to them, okay, so we got a chick with a guitar, so I guess that's the popular music.
Is that Moby Dick?
Yeah, that's Moby Dick.
All right, good
So
eye.
they gotta pull from Moby
My
Dick
first reaction when I saw
for
this
some reason.
was, what the blanky blank is Moby Dick doing on? And I did write them, and I said, you know, this is a book about contemporary popular music. Last time I checked, Moby Dick was published in 1851.
There is an album, a metal album that is about Moby Dick.
Well,
And I think that's
Well,
what they
fine.
had in mind.
Whales make music.
It's a really good album.
you would be the one reader to make that connection, Tommy. Now,
It's a
this is
really
what I
good
find
album.
kind of interesting, because they claim that they don't use AI. But if you've ever played around with AI, and you get in here and you try and figure out what these words are, AI will give you a jumble of words. I mean, sometimes it looks like they're writing in Russian or something. So all of this is, this kind of graffiti stuff is AI. So I said, look, I get it, I understand, we're gonna have a collage, that's fine, you got an image. But a bunch of this book is about rap and hip hop too. We gotta get some black music in here. So I said, why don't you get like a ghetto blaster? That's kind of a racist term, I should say jam box, but we called them ghetto blasters back in the 80s. But there's gotta be some kind of hip hop. I said, if we've gotta have text over here, what can we do that is kind of associated with music that you could bring in text? And initially I said, how about a top 10 Billboard hit list or whatever? Well, that's copyright, so you can't do it. And then I happened to be in a bar one night playing a jukebox, and I thought, hey, jukebox labels, maybe we could have it be jukebox. So I sent them a list of 10 fictional songs that are from different novels. My favorite of which is a song from a throwaway book called, the song is called 99 Chicks Beating Down My Door, which is kind of like Thomas life here. But, so, you know, it just gives you a little flavor. Sorry, I'm just, it's like a jukebox, all right? Now, I said, get some hip hop in there. So you see they pasted a jam box on the cover. Looks like a sticker.
Yeah.
And let the Getty
Which
images.
But this is kind of what I like the best. I said, you know, hip hop graffiti. So they spliced in this. Now I don't know where they got that, but unless my eyes deceive me, they have the word BITCH on the cover of my book. I didn't bring that up to them.
Yeah, love a good water.
I don't know if that's
Chilling in the
intentional. I don't know if that's intentional or not. Tends to get used a lot in hip hop, unfortunately. But I would be very interested to see if anybody points that out to me. So anyway, it's not the book cover that I would have wanted, but you don't always have control over stuff. And at the end of the day, you know, what matters is what's inside. So, I want you to play around and come up with, through AI, the book cover that you would most like to have. All right, one more quick thing that Caitlin has reminded me of. We had talked in the majors meeting about having some kind of, on a Friday night or a Saturday, some sort of workshop about graduate school letters and all of that kind of stuff. Let's talk about this Thursday. If you're interested in doing that, let's set up a date maybe in February where we could take a Saturday and we could all go have some food together or something. All right, we'll see you on Thursday. Please look over the assignment and come to class because we're kind of rushing through this about what you might do. We do have a guest speaker that's going to talk a little bit about career planning, and that will be our second assignment next week. All right? But do come to class with maybe some ideas about what you would do for this assignment, and we'll talk about it. Anybody have any questions? Okay. I hope you didn't mind me teasing.
No, you caught me off guard a little bit.
I tend to tease everybody.